it's really wonderful to see so many of you here tonight. I know it's been a long day, and the residency week is always pure adrenaline until sometime in the evening where it turns into adrenaline and exhaustion. So please hang on with us through the exhaustion part because we have an amazing slate of readers for you tonight. Folks from as far back as 2008, other folks who you will no doubt recognize from them being around campus or around Zoom in recent residencies. My name is Michael Mercurio. I'm the executive director of Cambridge Common Writers. We are an alumni organization for the Lesley MFA program. So if you are a current student, we're really looking forward to having you join us when you graduate. If you are a graduating student, please reach out to us and let's get you involved because we want you with us. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the board members from Cambridge Common Writers, our co-founders, Rex Arrowsmith and Robbie Gamble, Julia Leaf, who is our secretary of the board and our webmaster, and our board members at large, Jasmine Warga, Akila Culbraith Britt, Michael Lowenthal, who is our faculty liaison to the board, and boy, where did everybody else go? This is one of the things about Zoom. I've been using it for like 4 years now, and I still get confused when new people join. Maria Tyre is another one of our board members, and we are currently working on filling our writing for stage and screen slot. So if you are someone who is interested in potentially being on the Cambridge Common Writers board, please send us an email and let's have a conversation. Oh, and Jin Hoke is our treasurer. Thank you, Akila, for reminding me of that. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our first reader for tonight, and it's a real thrill for me to see her read because I've heard her read a couple of times, and she has an incredibly distinctive voice and is just a wonderful human being. And that's Diane Griffin. And Diane writes essays, fantasy, and songs, and she also responds to whatever whims come her way. She's director of programming for short films for Wicked Queer, the Boston LGBTQ Film Festival. And she's currently at work on one or another of the 3 or 4 fantasy stories she has taking up space in her brain. Her work has been published in Common Thought, For All Intents and Purposes, and the Piscataqua Press. She is a transgender woman. She's married to Karen Larson, who's a supremely talented artist in her own right. And you can find out more about Diane at her website. I'm going to drop the link into the chat. Diane, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. That was everything I could have hoped it would be. So yeah, let's see. I think that I'm reading a piece that will be appearing in August, I'm told, in a project being done by Pandora Magazine. It's a project that has a print aspect and an online aspect. It's called Dead Slow, and it's about slowing down the pace in culture and the benefits of doing so. And the name of my piece is Bands. There are 2 content warnings. The first one is especially for Michael. This piece contains Beatles, and it also contains Yoko Ono for anyone who is triggered by Yoko Ono. So this is called Bands. The first band I was ever in lasted for 2 or 3 years. We recorded about 8 albums worth of original music in that time. We were insular, angry, stupid, smart, maladjusted, and just plain weird. We called ourselves by many names because we made music with different members rotating in and out for different ends, but the 2 most common names we made music under were the Corporate Whores, our punk band, and the Festering Sores, our weirdo noise band. We played every day, which was easy to do since we lived together. Dennis and Phil would come home from work and we would rehearse as the corporate whores. Most nights we would then eat dinner, do bongs, and start making strange cassette recordings, which we called festering, as in, hey, you want to fester? Or, dude, let's fester. To which one would invariably reply, yeah, should I play guitar? Or something similar. There were things we could say to each other that would have sounded like nonsense to anyone else. I miss that. It's been a really long time since I've been in a real band. Sometimes I think I should give up on the desire for that insular, mysterious connection, but if the opportunity came along, I'd do it in a heartbeat. When I talk about that desire, though, the most common reaction I get is no reaction at all. Occasionally, someone will say something like, I'm in 4 bands. And I'll think, no, you're not. You're in 4 ensembles. It's a totally different thing. I've gone the ensemble route. That's not anything I'm interested in. An ensemble is a group of musicians gathered together on an ad hoc basis, each player learning the music on their own and getting together maybe once or twice before a gig for rehearsal, if at all. They'll play whatever gig the person who has hooked everyone up for has booked, often sounding shambolic and half-assed, though not always. Experienced players together and things go well. And when everybody goes their own way afterwards, the very different definition of a one-night stand, to my way of thinking, it's a surefire recipe for mediocrity. Here's the best example of an ensemble I've ever been involved with. Once I put together a group to back me for a benefit show. I gave everyone recordings of my songs and met with each musician on an individual basis to run through the material. The whole band didn't actually meet until we each loaded our own equipment into the club for the show. I found myself introducing players to each other for the first time right there on stage. After a brief sound check, we played an entire set of my original songs competently and without major incident. At the end of the set, everybody packed up and left. So far as I know, some of those players have never set eyes on each other since. We sounded fine. Everybody found the pocket, that place in the beat where everything matches up and the music feels unified, maybe even manages to soar a bit easily. There are some seasoned musicians, some of them with a jazz background. They'd done this sort of gig many times in many combinations. Playing that gig was fun, but it was like dancing with a stranger who knows how. It sounded ordinary. Anything that happened during that set could have happened in almost any gig with good players. When the music stopped, everybody moved on. It was a perfectly satisfactory ensemble experience. A band is something deeper, a relationship. It's harder. You have to deal with each other's quirks and prejudices. I get why people avoid such situations, the entanglements, the drama, the frustration of dealing with people and their problems, rehearsal after rehearsal, week after week, month after month. These things are more trouble than most of us want in our lives. But I crave it. Not because I need relationship drama in my life, but for something that comes with sticking with the band through all of that. Let's call it telepathy. A band begins over time to hear each other's thoughts as music. You develop intimacy and a resulting camaraderie with your bandmates that goes beyond what can be conveyed through language alone. You begin to be able to think, if I do this, then she'll do that, without having to discuss it. My last band was the Hexatonics, which played songs I wrote and had previously played solo. That band was Kate Devil on drums, Karen Elliott on electric guitar, and me on acoustic guitar and vocals. Karen and I would go out to Kate's house and play in her basement maybe twice a week. It was a weird little band, but it was a band. The songs were mine, but everybody wrote their own parts. We did a few covers, a Barry White song, a Husker Du song, an old Kurdish traditional country song, but most of the set was my material and I did all of the singing. The music was created by all of us together. Not only did Kate and Karen write their own parts to each song, but the songs themselves changed as we played them together. We played 2 shows, one in Kate's basement for a party and one at a little local indie rock club, but it was complicated, it didn't last. All of the interpersonal stuff, all of the ways we were different in our priorities, our tastes, and our expectations, all of the day-to-day stuff of our lives came into the rehearsal space with us. It both helped create our performance together and made it more and more difficult to play until we had to stop. These things are part of a band and are the essential difference between the two types of entities I'm talking about here. An ensemble avoids the interpersonal, except on the most surface level. Scheduling is the extent to which an ensemble considers its various members' outside lives in any meaningful way. All baggage loads in and out with the instruments. The hexatonics were the counter example of that. That it didn't last fits the model quite well. A band socializes the learning process. Though I brought in original songs, and other material was generated outside our group, Karen, Kate, and I put the material through a process of reworking that was in some ways intentional and in some ways nonverbal, even subconscious, springing out of each of our idiosyncrasies as players and as people. That nonverbal socialized learning and the accommodating of idiosyncrasy is the source of a band's telepathy. That telepathy expresses itself in moments, like a zap of static electricity, releasing its potential in a moment of contact. It can happen in the first moment when two musicians play together, though that is rare. And if it does happen in that first meeting, it may not happen again for a long time, if it ever does. Or it can come into the rehearsal space without the players realizing it over the course of many meetings, so gradually that you don't even realize that it's happening. The telepathic channel between the members of a band widens and becomes more robust over time. The risk is that anything and everything comes through that channel if it is truly open. By the time the world had heard of the Beatles, they had been playing together for a number of years. Much of that time in those early years, they played in a little bar called Star Club in Hamburg, West Germany, 6 or 7 hours a night, 6 days a week. The situation had to be isolating and therefore brought their interplay as a band into sharp focus. Later, when they became the most famous band in the world, they were, as one associate of the band put it, incarcerated together full time. By the end, they were making the best music of their lives, but they couldn't stand to be around each other. The channel was open and all of the interpersonal tension was passing through that channel along with the magic. But as they were finding the act of playing together impossible, at least one of them was finding that channel opening with a new collaborator. On the 4th album they made together, Yoko Ono's Plastic Ono Band, there is a moment when John and Yoko's telepathy is plainly observable. In the opening section of the song Why, John is playing slide guitar and Yoko is singing. In the opening section of the song, there's a point where it is impossible to tell where John's guitar playing ends and Yoko's singing begins. They are one sound together, a single tone made by John's hands and Yoko's breath. It's a transcendent moment, an audible example of the sort of connection I'm craving when I say I want to be in a band. The telepathy of a band in performance is to be shared with an audience. Though through that transcendence of sound, there is a cosmic unity that all in earshot, or more precisely mind shot, heart shot, can experience together. It follows then that it should be possible to achieve that connection to an audience, even as a solo musician. But when I worked alone as a solo musician, the repetition and loneliness of rehearsal made it a drag. The performance of my songs at gigs a rigmarole rather than an opportunity to soar. I never achieved transcendence on stage alone. That cosmic extraordinary connection, that telepathy that I've experienced as a member of band has otherwise eluded me. A band already has the channel open between its members. The spark of telepathic connection can become the blaze of transcendence, and it lurks around the edges of insular references, the endless dance of each player's presence coming into the band space. It even requires some strife. The butting of heads, the misunderstandings and challenges along the way lead to deeper concord, if the players can remain open and vulnerable. The giving of oneself to the collective moment allows those flashes of universal connection to the infinite. And that's that. Thank you.
Oh man, that was great. Diane, I love the way you write. I love the way you draw things together that I wouldn't have thought of necessarily together, and how you can breathe new life even into a band that has been played to death in your telling of the story. So thank you for that. Again, folks, visit Diane's website, check out what her work is that's out there in the world, and show some appreciation for her. Thank you. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Patricia O'Connell Pearson. Patty is a former high school history teacher and curriculum writer. She has a master's in education from George Mason University and an MFA from Lesley University. Her first book, Fly Girls, was named a Best of 2018 by A Mighty Girl and a Best of 2019 by Bank Street Books. Fighting for the Forest was named one of 4 finalists for the 2020 New York Historical Society's Children's History Book Prize. And Conspiracy, Nixon, Watergate, and Democracy's Defenders was released in August of 2020. All of Patty's books are nonfiction for ages 10 and up, and 10 and up does include all of us on this call, from Simon & Schuster Books for Young Readers. When she's not writing, researching, or catching up with her 4 adult children, Patty can often be found talking about history as a volunteer with the National Park Service in Washington, D.C. You can find links to Patty's books in the Cambridge Common Writers Bookstore and through her website, which I have just added to the chat. So, Patty, take it away.
Thank you, Michael, that introduction. And I have to say, Diane, that I have to admit to being old enough to have been an original Beatles fan. So thank you. So I'm going to actually read from a book that's coming out also from Simon & Schuster Books for Young Readers a year from this summer in August of 22, which for those of you who are not yet published gives you an idea of how long it takes to get these things done. And this one currently is called We Are Your Children Too, Black Students, White Supremacists, and the Battle for America's Schools. And it's about the massive resistance after Brown versus the Board of Education, where a county in South Central Virginia, rather than integrate its public schools, closed them entirely for 5 years. And so there are people my age walking around in that county illiterate because of it. And it's a story that is not well known, but it's also a story of young people before Rosa Parks, before the Montgomery bus boycott, before Little Rock, before any of it, deciding to do something to better their lives and make things better for everyone else. So this is chapter 1 of that, We Are Your Children Too. Chapter 1, Unequal, fall 1950. Barbara Johns had been thinking a lot. That didn't surprise anyone who knew her. Her grandmother described the 16-year-old as quiet, serious. Seemed she had to do a lot of thinking. Her mother said she was deep. But during the fall of 1950, Barbara was thinking about one thing in particular, one thing that had been bothering her for quite a while. When would something be done about her school, R.R. Moton High School in Prince Edward County, Virginia? All the students at Moton High agreed that their school was too small and badly equipped. Parts of it were a leaky, drafty, dilapidated disaster. Barbara knew how they felt because they frequently talked about it at lunch, a lunch they had to bring from home since the school had no cafeteria. It had no gym either, or locker rooms, or science equipment, or even reliable school buses. R.R. Moton High School, named for an educator from the area who led the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, was built in 1939 and designed for 180 students. By 1950, the student body numbered nearly 500. Under pressure from parents and the principal, the county school board had come up with a temporary solution. 3 rickety wooden outbuildings covered in a heavy paper coated with tar, the thick black liquid used in road building. Often used on chicken coops, the tar paper was supposed to keep rain out, but it didn't do its job very well at all. And it seemed that when members of the school board said temporary, they actually meant permanent. Barbara Johns was a good student and a generally cheerful, rather quiet person. But as much as she liked and respected her teachers and the principal, and as much as she enjoyed learning, R.R. Moton High School was wearing her down. It was wearing everyone down. Like Barbara, John Stokes and his twin sister Carrie were good students and eager to learn, eager enough to walk 4.5 miles along the gravel shoulder of a very busy highway to get to the overcrowded, poorly supplied school every day, no matter what the weather was like. The county didn't provide a school bus for the Stokes or a lot of other students. 4.5 miles, at least an hour and a half of walking each way to get to a rundown, shabby school. John Stokes commented that the cows he milked had nicer buildings than the students at Moton did. Imagine the determination it took for a young person to face that kind of discomfort, difficulty, even danger every day just to go to school. For some students who didn't plan to go to college or trade school, a high school diploma didn't seem worth the terrible effort. Many were tempted to drop out, and who could blame them? Barbara, who wanted very much to go to college, never considered quitting, but the idea of 2 more years at Moton was depressing. Barbara Johns looked a bit younger than 16, with wide-set, almond-shaped brown eyes, dark shoulder-length hair, and a big smile that lit up her whole face. She was soft-spoken, but not afraid to say what she thought, and she was comfortable talking to adults, the school music teacher in particular. Miss Inez Davenport made Barbara feel she could tell her almost anything. One day, when the situation at Moton High School had really gotten to her, Barbara told Miss Davenport just how fed up she was. It wasn't fair, she said, that she and all the other students had to attend a school with such dreadful equipment and miserable facilities. Not only did the tar paper shacks, as everyone called them, leak, but their only heat came from wood-burning, pot-belly stoves at one end of each long, low structure. In winter, students sitting near the stoves felt ready to combust, while students in the back of the room wore their heavy coats during class. Students from other schools laughed and said the shacks looked like chicken coops. They were right. It was embarrassing. Even using the shacks, the school was bursting with students. The original 1939 building in Farmville was sturdy enough, brick with wood floors and tall windows. But now several teachers had to meet their classes in the auditorium, really just a big room with folding chairs, a small stage, where the noise of many classes going on at once was terrible. Worse, students moving from one wing of the school to the other had to walk through that auditorium, adding to the distractions. Some teachers taught classes in old abandoned school buses parked beside the building. Others met their students outside unless it was raining, and the problem was much bigger than just the actual buildings. There weren't enough books to go around, and the books the school did have were old, out of date, and worn, just like all the classroom equipment. Even very dedicated students often came late or missed school because the school buses, many times driven by students, broke down frequently. Oh, those buses. It hurt Barbara to even think about them. Just a year earlier, a student-driven bus had broken down as it crossed the railroad tracks. Before anyone could do anything, a train bore down on the stalled bus, and the terrible accident killed 5 students. One of them had been Barbara's close friend. That young girl shouldn't have died. None of those children should have died, and they wouldn't have if the county had spent money to keep the buses in good repair. They might not have died if the county had hired a professional driver who was trained for emergencies. The fact was that those children probably wouldn't have died if they were on their way to another county high school. The whole thing was unfair. Barbara felt bolder as she talked to Miss Davenport and finally said that she was sick and tired of being stuck with such a school. Miss Davenport thought for a minute and then said, "Why don't you do something about it?" Was her favorite teacher dismissing her, Barbara wondered? Didn't Miss Davenport care? Hurt and unable to think of anything to say, Barbara turned and left the room, but she couldn't push Miss Davenport's words out of her head. Was it possible that the woman wasn't being sarcastic? Could she have meant it? Maybe there was something Barbara could do, but what? The Johns family farm lay in the soft hills southwest of Farmville, where dark green pine forests stood out against the yellower green of tobacco fields and pastures. Each spring brought 1,000 more shades of green. Barbara liked to spend quiet time in her favorite shady spot in the woods when she could get away from the younger children. There she could let go of her frustration and imagine miracles, but she knew no miracle was likely. While she fed the pigs or collected eggs or did any of her many chores, she brooded about how awful her school was. What made the situation especially painful was that just down the road from R.R. Moten High School stood Farmville High School, a well-built, well-equipped, well-supplied, spacious public school, a school she and John Stokes and the others weren't allowed to attend. The days went by, and still Barbara had no idea what she or anyone could do to convince the Prince Edward County School Board to repair or replace the school. She was busy with homework and with the drama club, the chorus, and the student council. Whenever she had any free time, she read and read every kind of book she could find. She wasn't allowed to go to the public library in town, but her uncle Vernon Johns, who lived in Alabama, kept shelves and shelves of books in her grandmother's house. He encouraged Barbara and the other children to make use of those books. They took her to places where roofs didn't leak and school books weren't worn. They helped fuel her dreams, but finding time to read was hard. Violet Johns, Barbara's mother, worked for the U.S. Navy in Washington, D.C., nearly 200 miles from home. The family needed the money she earned there, so Mrs. Johns stayed during the week and came back to Prince Edward County most weekends. With Barbara's father, Robert, working the farm, it was up to Barbara to care for her younger sister and 3 brothers. She fixed their breakfast, packed their lunches, made sure they were clean and dressed, and got them onto the school bus every morning. She cooked dinner every night. One morning, Barbara struggled to get the children out the door and down the hill to meet the bus on time. Only when they got to the stop did she realize that she'd left her own lunch in the house. She ran up the hill and grabbed it, but couldn't get back before the bus came, and her siblings couldn't get the driver to wait. It was much too far to walk, some 15 miles. She waited, hoping a neighbor on the way to Farmville might come by and give her a lift. Then she saw a big yellow school bus coming. She knew where it was going, and she knew what was about to happen. The half-empty bus was on its way right past Moten High School to Farmville High School, the one with the cafeteria and gym and science lab and enough books and heat, and the bus went by. The driver would not stop for Barbara, though it was obvious where she was headed. She wasn't a bit surprised. Barbara Johns had always known why her school's facilities were overcrowded and pathetic, and the other school's facilities were very good. And she knew on this morning why she couldn't get a ride to school on a half-empty bus. The students on that bus were white, and she was black. They attended the white high school, and she attended the black high school. In Prince Edward County's white-run school system, their education mattered. Hers didn't. The inequality that hit Barbara Johns so forcefully that day in late 1950 wasn't new. The differences between Prince Edward County's Moten High School and its Farmville High School weren't new either, and they weren't unusual in the United States. All over the South, states and counties required separate schools for white and black children, schools with the same kinds of differences Barbara saw in Moten High and Farmville High. Generally, white children went every day to tidy buildings with wax tile floors. There were desks, books, and supplies for every student. Black children in the same areas often attended school in leaky roofed wood shacks with little or no equipment, some even without indoor toilets. Northern states didn't have laws separating white and black students, yet those students often ended up in very different circumstances anyway. It had gone on for generations. But on this morning, as Barbara Johns watched the white students' bus pass her by, she knew it was time for change. Later, she wrote, "Right then and there, I decided something had to be done about this inequality. That night, a plan began to formulate in my mind." Barbara knew that any demand for a better school building was risky, bold for a place like Prince Edward County. She worried about how the county's white leaders would react to such a demand. Still, she had to try. She had to try for herself and for her younger brothers and sister. But as she considered her plan, Barbara Johns had no idea that she was about to make history. No idea that her plan would lead to years of struggle for something much bigger than she imagined. She may not have thought about it, but Barbara Johns was going up against more than 300 years of Virginia history, of American history. Inequality and injustice in Prince Edward County had started long before public schools existed, and almost 200 years before there was a U.S. Constitution. That's a lot of history. But Prince Edward County's story doesn't make sense without it. History is like that. One event connects to another and then another. Those events and connections help to explain the past and much of the present. Sadly, Inequality is part of the history of the United States. It's an ugly and difficult piece of history, but it's a history every American needs to know. And so chapter 2 is titled Hard History, 1607 to 1950. That's it.
Thank you, Patty. It's clear to me now why you've received such acclaim for your writing. That was a beautifully constructed piece that carried us along through some really difficult things, and just, I don't know, I got chills while I was listening to you read it. So it was really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, check out Patty's books. Look for that one when it comes out. It's definitely history that we all need to know. And go to her website, check out her books through the Cambridge Common Writers bookstore. Our next reader, well, reader's not exactly the right word. Wendy Ewan is one of our Writing for Stage and Screen grads, and she is going to be presenting a short piece with the help of 2 actors. Wendy's full-length plays include Land of Enchantment and The Undesirables, and she's also written numerous short and 10-minute plays, screenplays, and TV pilots. She was a National Playwrights Conference semifinalist, a KCACTF regional and national finalist, Playwright Center Core Apprentice Program finalist, and ITV Fest semifinalist. Wendy has had several LA productions and is a proud member of the Dramatists Guild of America. She's the founder and artistic director of Scribe Stages, a site-specific page-to-stage theater group that she established in 2015 to help emerging writers develop their work. Her full-lengths, children's one-act, and 10-minute plays can be found on New Play Exchange. Wendy writes magical realism, absurdism, and dramedy, and her favorite go-to source of internal and external conflict is the fish out of water story. But she also loves the angst of teenagers and their parents. And she's obsessed with 80s period pieces. I'm going to drop her website in the chat so that you can follow her career closely as well, and hand things over to Wendy and her actors.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. We are reading Winning, which is a 10-minute play. I will read stage directions where they're necessary. And Brianna Gurdzian and Kelvin KJ Rhodes will be reading the parts of Sunny and James. Winning. Setting: the Roadrunner Motel is not a destination, but rather a place to stop for the night out of desperation. It has a standard queen-size bed with worn bed coverings that are rough to the touch in a flowery 70s brown fabric. It has 2 bedside tables with a Bible in the drawer, a closet, maybe a suitcase stand, a cramped bathroom. The set may be representational or for site-specific performances set in an actual motel room in which small audiences rotate in and out. At Rise, Sunny and James enter the room carrying backpacks. They are dressed in casual clothes, but look military nonetheless.
Well, this is it, the road slummer. Take it in, my friend, take it all in.
What's that smell?
The smell of despair. And maybe old socks? It's just one night. All the fancy hotels downtown were booked up. Tourist season, you know?
Lucky us.
Hey, I'm the one who had to grow up in this dump. Well, technically behind the dump. Trust me, we can survive one night here. Get some shut-eye, go to the memorial or ash scattering or whatever the hell she plans on doing with him.
I saw an old RV back there coming in. Tell me that wasn't yours.
No, that must be the castle of some other fallen king. Dog relocated his prized possessions to Mexico after all the, shit went down with my brother. Clean start, I guess.
Way to take care of your family, bro.
I don't blame him. We weren't his real family anyway. Surprised he stayed with Louise.
Your mom?
Yeah, my mom. Surprised he stayed with her as long as he did. That woman could drive a saint to crime. I think they really loved each other for a while.
What was his name? Crouching dog, pissing dog.
Sitting dog fool. Moon and I used to call him shitting dog behind his back when he was being an asshole. What can I say? They were the last of the old school hippies, didn't believe in marriage, free spirits. He was one of those white dudes from a rich family who likes to go around saying he was a quarter Apache and thought he was sticking it to the man by living in poverty. It was all right though. I had the top bunk, Moon had the bottom. We made it work. It was better than living in our car, which we did for a few months before she met him after my dad left or got locked up or whatever. Anyway.
I guess Army life seems easy compared to that kind of childhood.
You know, I do like the structure and the steady paycheck. Louise never had any money. Mr. I can't remember his name. The day manager. He used to let Moon and me help him clean the rooms for ice cream money. I'm sure I've cleaned this very same room 100 times.
You okay, babe? I know this is a lot.
I'm fine. I feel a migraine coming on. I better take an aspirin, stave it off.
I've got water in my pack.
He turns
Babe?
away, and the rattling of her pill bottle becomes amplified, perhaps an echo of crying or a scream. Wait, was there something in the window? When James stands up, it stops. Sunny is frozen in place.
Babe? You sure you're okay? You look shaken up.
I'm fine. You know, the first time he tried, it was pills.
Oh, man.
Yep. I just remembered. He got into Louise's antidepressants, had to rush him to the ER in the middle of the night, pump his stomach and everything. Yeah, and he was probably only, about 13?
Jesus.
Yeah. Poor kid. I think I just need to lie down. That drive kicked my ass.
Yeah, let's get you laid down.
No funny business, private.
Wouldn't dream of it. Private. You're so tense. I'm gonna hit the showers. You get some rest.
He exits into the bathroom. Sunny falls back onto the bed, exhausted. The shower starts running. She pulls the bed covering partially over herself, turns, opens her eyes, and sees blood. It totally covers the sheet on the opposite side of her.
Sunny?
Jumps up, shaking, staring. James rushes back into the room, hair wet in a towel.
Sunny, what happened? What is it? What? What is it, a spider? I know you hate spiders, but this is a little bit dramatic.
Blood! Blood! Don't you see it? How can you not see it? It's all over. It's all over the sheet.
There's no blood, babe. See? It's just your mind playing tricks on you.
Oh my God. Holy shit. I swear there was blood on the sheets, man. I swear to God. James, am I going crazy?
No, you're not going crazy, babe. I think the stress, you just came off of a 10-hour shift and then drove across the country. You're just exhausted.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Maybe we should try to find another place. Get you out of here. All these memories can't be easy to process.
You know, the second time he stole Doc's razor blades, I found him in his bed. It was almost too late.
I'm
He
so
pulls her in close, strokes her hair, holds her.
I'm so sorry, babe. This is too much. I can't imagine.
Sorry, you must think I'm totally insane.
I think you're grieving, and this is really hard.
That it is. You know, when I was a senior, I won this like big national award for writing.
You never told me that.
Yeah, it was for some short story contest. My English teacher submitted me for, I remember the theme was home. So I described my home. Isn't that ironic? It's not like I made anything up. I just described my life. Why should I get a prize for that?
He pulls on some shorts in the closet or off stage as they talk.
Because you were able to put it all into words. Make someone else see this. How come you don't write anymore? You're obviously amazing at it.
Yeah, that day was the worst. It was like a Saturday, probably. We were cleaning one of the rooms, might have been this one. And I remember being pissed off at Moon because he was messing around as usual. And I just wanted to be done with it and go get a chili cheese dog. I remember I was summer, I must have been growing. Anyway, these people pulled up in like a really nice car. It must have been about the end of the school because it was hot as hell already, but it wasn't summer vacation yet. I remember the lady was wearing one of those like skirt suit numbers. She had on these cream colored high heel pumps and everyone was sweating to death. I remember thinking her beautiful shoes were gonna get trashed in that dirt parking lot. I kept imagining wiping the dust off with the rag I had in my hand the whole time they were talking to me. It was like out of a movie or something. They asked if I knew where Sunny Alvarez was, and I said, "You found her." And they told me they were here from some big kids publishing company or something. The lady was there to like talk to me and give me the prize. It was like $100 and a frame certificate. And the guy was just there to take pictures of her, of the whole her giving me my prize thing. Now that I think about it, it's kind of weird that they just came by like that. But I mean, I guess we didn't have a phone. The school probably just sent them to our address on file. Huh. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that was it? They just took your picture and left?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know if I ever got a copy. Probably sent to Louise. Sure, it's long gone by now. Anyway.
Sunny, this is crazy. You're like a famous writer in the making. How was winning an award such a horrible day?
Well, so I was really excited and flattered and everything. But then they wanted to talk to my legal guardian or whatever. So we had to go get Louise. And of course, Dog came with her. We just went back to the room for the picture and everything because it was slightly less embarrassing than the trailer. They were stoned out of their minds as usual, but they came and were so happy for me and hugging me and stuff. I remember Dog picked me up and spun me around and my cheeks hurt. I was smiling so much. I felt like I'd won $1 million. Like I'd won that, what's it called? Sweepstakes, the clearinghouse sweepstakes. It was like I'd won that. And Ed McMahon was there giving me my prize. Then I saw his face and he just looked so lost, so out of place. I'd even forgotten about him for a minute. I mean, sure, he was annoying and everything, but he was my brother, you know? All we really had was each other. Anyway, after the people left, Dog was like, to Moon, When are you gonna get off your lazy ass and get an award like your sister instead of sitting there watching your fat ass grow? And he just kept going, like going off on him about his grades, about his weight, about pretty much everything the way he always did. And here I was holding this sweaty award, wanting to just make it all go away. I just wanted to make it all go away. His sweet, pudgy face just melted into tears. He ran away before they could see, but I saw. I wished it had never happened. I wish I had never written that stupid story, or written it in invisible ink or something. Winning that prize, I don't know. It kind of messed things up between me and Moon. After that, I mean, I graduated a couple weeks later, went off to basic training. And that's when he started trying, you know, all of it. He never got to win anything, not one thing his whole life.
Wow. Okay. First of all, you know this is not your fault, right? Your brother, you deserve every good thing you've ever gotten in life. You did it all. No one helped you.
My teachers, some of them helped, you know, encouraged me.
That is their job, Sonny. If anyone along the way did help you, it's because they were supposed to. You know that. I do. I know you do. What happened to your brother has nothing to do with you, Sonny. He had issues. You guys had a shit deck to play. You were just a kid and...
Issues? That's what we're calling it? No one was there encouraging him. No one was helping him. I tried, but why did they give it all to me? He's the one who needed help, not me.
Babe, I'm not judging. I'm not. I just mean to say this wasn't... You couldn't. You did it, Sonny. You got out. You won.
Wait. Won? I won?
Babe, I didn't mean... Please. I'm just trying to...
No, you're right. Let me not go off like usual. I didn't realize how much this would mess with me. This shit's gnarly, man. Please don't make me go tomorrow.
Listen, why don't you take a nice hot shower, try to relax a little. I'll make some calls, try to find a room for the night. I'll work the military angle. There's got to be something someone can do for us.
Yeah. Sure.
You're a tough cookie, Sonny. But this shit, it's pretty hardcore for anyone. I got your back. You know that. Whatever it takes, we'll do the ash scattering thing. Give your mom, Luis, a hug, get the hell out of Dodge, back to base, back to our lives, okay?
Got it. Scatter, hug, out. It'll be fine. Back to real life. Get the hell out of this desert nightmare.
That's the spirit. Now, hit the shower, soldier.
Copy that.
She grabs her toiletry bag, exits to the bathroom. Shower starts. He pulls on her, inspects the sheets, shakes his head, concerned.
Jesus.
He takes out his cell, searches for hotels. A scream. James rushes over to the bathroom door, throws it open. We see a shadow of someone hanging in the doorway. James passes right through it to get to Sunny, still fully dressed, without sweatshirt, who pushes past him into the room to get away from it. He follows her in. The shadow disappears.
I saw him in the doorway hanging. He was right there. I saw him. I swear to God, I saw him.
Calm down. Calm down. Breathe.
I gotta get out of here, James. I can't do this. I can't face it. I should have been here for him. I should have done something. I gotta go home.
It's okay, Sonny. We're leaving, Sonny. Just grab your pack. I'll get the stuff from the bathroom.
I'm ready.
Sonny?
They grab their packs. start for the door. James is out when Sunny suddenly stops, frozen in place.
Sunny. Babe?
Moon?
She kneels down in front of Moon, who she can see clearly sitting in a wheelchair or chair in the doorway, staring blankly. There may be a projection of a picture of him in 90s clothing if desired.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Moon? Come on, babe. Let's get out of here.
I'm sorry I left you, Mooney. It wasn't right. I should have stayed. Try to help you.
Sunny, there's no one there. It's just your imagination. You're tired. Let's go.
I swear, I didn't mean to abandon you. I thought if I just get out, I could get the military college fund, get myself a real life, help you get out. I really wanted to. I was trying. You just didn't wait for me, Moon. You didn't wait for me to help you. Remember all the good times we had? Remember those chocolate dip cones from the Dairy Queen? And playing hide and seek in the arroyo? Remember when they were shooting that movie out here and Clint Eastwood opened the door buck naked in cowboy hat and boots? Remember that weirdo who liked to walk around in a tiara and those clip-on sparkly earrings? The balloon festival when we chased one of those balloons all the way back to behind the rodeo grounds? Remember when Dog got his boots stuck in the mud and when Louise shot him in the butt by accident with a BB gun? We laughed our asses off, Moon.
Sunny. Babe.
Remember how we laughed? Remember when that drunk politician drove into the motel sign? When that girl with the overbite at the pool had a crush on you and I told her you were taken so that she'd want you even more? Remember when there was that Aurora Borealis and we went outside and the sky was blood red and we thought the world was ending and we started crying and everything, and Dog gave us candy corn. It was so stale, your tooth broke. Remember when?
James watches in horror, not sure what to do. When he tries touching her shoulder, she doesn't even notice. When he tries waving a hand in front of her face, she doesn't notice. He watches, thinking, trying to figure out what to do. She rambles on until blackout. End of play.
Wow. Wendy, I was on the edge of my seat through the entire thing. Brianna and RJ, your performances were amazing. Wendy, that script was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you, RJ and Brianna, for bringing it to life. Our next reader is Kate Kearns. Kate is a poet and freelance editor based in Maine. She has published a chapbook with Finishing Line Press titled How to Love an Introvert. And she is currently looking for a home for her first full-length manuscript. While she's searching, though, her poems have appeared in Salamander, Northern New England Review, Pittsburgh Poetry Journal, Sugar House Review, Goose River Anthology, Soliloquies Anthology, and Literary Mama. Kate's essay, I Love You, Leave Me Alone, was included in Mothering Through the Darkness, an anthology from She Writes Press. Kate provides manuscript editing services to authors and poets through her agency, Black Squirrel Workshop. If you're interested in learning more about Kate's work, check out her website, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Kate, you're on.
Hi, guys. It's really cool to be back at Lesley again after 13 years. Oh, crap. Let's see, my first seminar of my first residency ever. They had us all break the ice by introducing ourselves and saying why we started writing, why we continue to. My answer was, I write because I suck at talking. And that remains the case today. So I don't do a ton of explanation in the beginning of poems, because I like you to be able to make your own associations anyway. Also, I tend to blather. So I'm going to start with a poem called Love Poem with Faults. Though the shoreline is old as land and sea. Neither sand nor water dissolves into the other. Draped in its own disguise, deep beneath the mirror, earth on earth knocks crusty elbows. A continent erupts from the floor, and though its moves are slow, it shifts, commits, shifts, commits. Land is made of meeting places, an interruption grown all over with grass and dandelions. Fissures form and settle, filled with water, sky, and tiny flecks we don't yet know exist. Its center, a magnet. This impossible balance began as a singularity of dense potential, a forest inside an acorn that burst apart into sand, amygdala, and birch bark that burns even when it's wet. I'm saying there are days I want to shake you, days I love better far away. Unlike land and sea, I choose to bind to you undissolved, at once feast and unconsumed. I'm thinking love's a glance back at singularity, a body's memory of a universe, all its fault lines and fig leaves pressed together, unalone and undifferent, patient and light as a dandelion seed. But I'm too comfortable with silence to tell you so. I just finished reading a book called Braiding Sweetgrass by the indigenous botanist Robin Wall Kimmerer, and there's a point where she says, you know, sometimes just stating a scientific fact is poetry. And I say, hell yeah to that. And move on to this poem called Sleepscape. Needy beings dream content. House, couch, stove shift to their night selves. The dog's metronome rests. True dark is scarce, but its permissions persist. Despite snow, moon snails, part jewel, part tongue, lap their midnight lunch, ambivalent to nest-bound gulls, as they've done since the Triassic. By dawn, no one will know they slid from the sea to devour their kin. Elephants who weep their dead sleep only 2 hours, curled like kittens. Under stars they cannot see, they wake and walk away, back, away. Dad waits until midnight to scream at me for giving away his car, his hardcovers, his carefully collected tray of colognes, and only then do I scream back for dying alone when there's no heaven to meet him. Dog claws on the floorboards shake me loose. Night is anything but still. Like a moonflower, it prefers to flourish without recognition. While the body lies covered, a dream takes up the whole brain, and the heart labors without being told to do so. Outside, at our road's elbow, streetlights ignite snowflakes' final descent. While inside, 2 humans breathe into their pillows. Earth rolls over, keeps them from drifting away. I've decided to shift from a night poem to a breakfast poem. This is called Over Breakfast. She tongues French toast to her left cheek. Mom, she says, there's a bug on the floor by the fridge. There it is, I say, a stink bug. Chew and swallow, please, before you talk. She's 5 years old, milk-lipped, all hair and eyes. Scoop it up, she says, put it outside, don't kill it. The bug stops its scuttling, its marmorated carapace almost at the shoe pile. Honey, it's January, I say. It'll freeze to death in minutes out in the cold. She chews a big bite and swallows it twice. Yeah, but outside you didn't kill it. She smears eggy bread and honey, fills her mouth with gold. My cat's been sleeping over there all day, and now she's up on my desk. Excuse you. So lately at readings, you hear a lot of garden poems because not a whole lot else to do this year, and it's that time of year. So I add to the canon my garden poem. Blessing the Garden. Hopefully the cat will stay down there. Okay. Dear dirty obligation, I set out to bless you. Your litany of weeds, green for the tending, those quiet minutes mist sizzling from the spigot. You show the neighbors I give a shit. Roses flaunt last year's pruning while grateful worms churn rot to flourishing. Broccoli popsicles with their dinner plate leaves have spoiled me, my loved ones, with earthy delights and ruined their frozen brothers. I meant to love the work of you the way a poet should. Brutal beet and carrot plume, I don't need you to teach me patience. I have a sturdy root. Mom lushed our apartment windows with succulents and green ponytails. Dad named his plants, lit them from below to snake shadows up his walls. You're the first ground I've owned. Roma tomatoes, their sweet grass tang, belong not to this, but to my childhood yard, to the Italian landlords who edged the property with beds and once a year filled bins and bins with fleshy red, blanched and peeled, performed their marinara ritual. I watched them, the way attention so predictably brought seedling to vine to pulpy heirlooms year after year. Listen, I'm still out here, feet wet with soil. I'm trying to love you. It'd be so easy to love you. All right. This is actually going to be in Sugar House Review's next issue, which is founded by a Lesley alum. To the man in line for tacos who isn't Brian. Brian browed with eyes Brian blue. You were Brian for sure till you spoke. Your voice, its un-Brian baritone, saved me. So glad to see you, him, an acquaintance-in-law I well enough like, but so not the same 5 faces I've seen for weeks I nearly leaped all 6 feet to get to you. Not even Brian is Brian anymore. Not before Brian, whom I haven't seen in years, divorced now, I keep forgetting. Not Brian, when my eyes leaned over my mask, eager with not impatience but recognition. Did I freak you out? Or am I a long out-of-touch top-half doppelganger too? Not Brian, we're in line for tacos while our country expires its air. Have you settled with yourself? If so, how? Stalking laps around my house today. Was it today? I pulled a book, a favorite since high school, from its slice of shelf. The inscription, a teenage relic, 5 neat lines from the first love whose gentle heart I cherished and smashed with earnest, inexperienced fumbling. He's not Brian either, but good sir, on this, my first outing in 16 days, my mind won't wrangle into line. Not Brian, your carne asadas with guac and a lime are up. All right, I'm going to break my rule of explaining things just once to say that Monhegan is an island about 10 miles off the coast of Maine. And when you're on the outside of it, on the ocean-facing side, on the rocks with just open sea coming at you, it's quite an experience. All right, Whitehead Cliff. Back turned to Monhegan, far from your country as you can sit. Waves beat the igneous shore to shards. Magma poured this land into light, and light drew it into pitch sweet shelter. Far as far, all the way to the brightward rim, sharp, fresh salt rushes, wrecks, retreats. This body is larger than anything living, all voice, its din absolute, a racket so smashing even the hardy gulls fly low. Stone shingled into 1,000 small ravines persists the iron wind. Without soil, beach roses feast the edges, find nooks in which to root. You scraped for months to get here, sure, but here you are. The hardwoods, their arms, went to timber in your name. Woman, don't you look away. Face into the holler and be brave. All right. This has a line in it stolen from Elizabeth Bishop. It is italicized on the page, but the poets in the audience will probably know which one it is without me telling you. Invitation to a room. Bring your scruffy hair for praise, overgrown with witness, to the room. Your body whole, not squared in blue lightness, to the room. With heaven knows how many angels all riding on the broad black brim of your hat, please come flying. We won't go crowding out to eat, just us and a piece of room. How long since your voice boomed with the breath in it, since I nearly spat the wine? Come with your sweats on, those new earrings. The room buzzes with boredom. Come fill the vacuum with your lemon shampoo. I've cleared the comfortable chairs. lit the good candles. Here, there's room to set your glass and plate next to mine. Will I be with you again? Boundaries with nothing else to do thin as orange hour dims the room. Friend, you're here. And ancestors, two young beloveds, just as present as you, just as wished for, as spoken to, fill no particular place in the room. How are you? How are you really? I've been dreaming toward train stations I never reach by morning. Bring nothing but yourself, your stress to the room to rest. Here's coffee and bread, that novel you'd like, Our Living and Dead. Kate the elder, who gave me her name, all accounted, at ease in the room. For my last poem, I'm going to go back to the thesis that science is poetry. It's called Dear After. The resurrection fern, down curled and drought crisp, waits dry in a gray between, then, when water steeps it again, revives to evergreen. In limbo it thrives, patient, like the wood frog, whose eggy body freezes solid in winter, its blood a tangled icicle. Though heart and brain clink like crystal and stop their vital work, livingness, somewhere inside, lives. Thaws with the brook silt, starts back up. It goes on, just like that. And water fills the dirt brown fern to green. Dear After, I don't know what to ask for. I don't know where this correspondence goes. My love sleeps warm beside me. Some days soon or not soon, for one of us than the other, this poem will become an elegy. Remind me it's possible to feel this. It's possible for atoms to disperse as they will, by all evidence scattered, while a frond of warmth, the long fact of it, holds like a body's imprint in its bed. Thanks for having me, guys. This was really fun.
Thank you, Kate. That was a beautiful reading. Your sense of humor and your sense of sonic play were just marvelous. I am going to be carrying the line "dog claws on the floorboards" with me for a very long time, but that was only one of many lines that I wrote down. So thank you, folks. Grab Kate's chapbook from Finishing Line Press if you loved those poems as much as I did, and be sure to look for her poem coming out in Sugar House Review. Our final reader of the evening, last and certainly by no means least, is Nada Samih-Rotondo. She is a writer, teacher, and mother who is inspired by the relationship between personhood and place. She's also interested in the slippery concept of home, in local histories, and creature folklore. Nada was born in Kuwait to Palestinian parents, and she immigrated to the United States at the age of 6. She lives in the enchanted post-industrial land of Providence, Rhode Island, with her husband and 3 kids. You can find her work in the Masters Review, Squat Birth Journal, Topography Literary Magazine, Frequency Anthology, and Gulfstream Magazine. And you can find out much more about her and read her really wonderful blog at her website, which has just appeared in the chat. Nada?
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. I feel like when I was doing my MFA program like 10 years ago, I was often way too exhausted to make it to all the readings. So I really appreciate everybody being here. Okay. And I also love the reference about science and poets, because Electric Lit literally just posted about that. The scientists don't want the poets to know about science. Thank you so much to all the readers that came before me. All right, here's a little short story based on my grandmother's experience, slightly fictionalized, in the time of the birthing tree. London, May 1958. My mother was born under a lemon tree in the far end of my family's orchard. Since the rest of Mama's 9 siblings were born there too, it became known in our family as the birthing tree. I remember climbing the thin knobby branches, racing to pick a bigger lemon than my little brother. We used to eat them whole, biting through them like apples, sour juice dribbling from our mouths. The rind was softer back then, pliable. Everything I know about grandma, I learned from my mother. Most land-owning women with her influence gave birth at the city hospital, but Teta was a country girl at heart. She was born and raised in Tulkarem in the West Bank, probably under a lemon tree herself. The daughter of a farmer, she never set foot in a city till she married my grandfather, a Jaffa merchant. That was because, as the eldest daughter, she needed to remain close to home to help raise her younger siblings. She died when I was very young, and as a result, I don't remember much about her. I wonder what her voice sounded like, whether it was raspy like Mama's or soft like mine. Mama said her hair was black and straight, not light brown and curly like the rest of us. She said her hair was so long she needed to stand on a table to have it brushed. I had trouble picturing that since I'd never let my hair get any longer than my shoulders. It was shortly before leaving for London to attend midwifery school that Mama and I were preparing supper, stuffing grape leaves with herbed rice. After watching me work silently for a moment, she said, "Meha, you have your grandmother's hands, strong and sure." I looked up to meet her gaze and noticed, as though for the first time, a black and white photograph of my brother and I in front of the birthing tree, framed on the wall behind her. We wear toothy grins and hold out lemons for the camera, blissfully ignorant of what was to come. Jaffa, Palestine, September 1947. Baba told me to meet him at his shop today after school. He doesn't want me walking home from school by myself anymore. He says it's getting dangerous with all this talk of war. But Baba, I remind him, I don't walk home by myself. There's Fatima, Miriam, and her brother Hakim. We have fun walking together. We take the longer way home, stopping by the docks to watch the fishermen shake their nets out. Thinking about piles of slippery fish, I wondered how it would taste if Mama fried them or made a stew. We passed vendors selling fish, oranges, lemons, and spices. I would hate to be the one to miss out on our walk, and especially hate it if I had to be stuck at Baba's tailoring shop with my younger brother, Yasin. I open my mouth to speak, but I'm interrupted by Baba. This is surprising because he's never the one who tells me what to do. He's usually the one to go to if you want sweets and Mama says no. He wouldn't tell you yes right away, even though he could because he's our Baba, but waits until Mama is out of sight first. He avoids anything that would cause an argument with her or anyone else, especially now that Mama's moving slower than usual with the baby coming. Even though everyone thinks because Baba is big that he's rough too, but he's actually as quiet and gentle as a deer. This is true of him most moments, except when he's listening to his favorite comedy show on the radio. People in the shop next door can probably hear his loud belly laughs every time his show comes on. His chuckles used to scare me when I was little, since they turned his mustache into a giant hairy caterpillar. That caterpillar lay sleeping today, though, because Baba was not smiling. His voice was almost a whisper as he told me what he heard in town today. People think they will send bombs down at any time. The man on the news talks about an attack on Deir Yassin that killed many people, even women with babies. My little brother Yasin talks about joining the army so he could fight them. Baba laughed and said he would just end up doing what he does all day anyway, sit around and shoo at flies. I can't tell if Baba had a problem with the fighters, which Abu Khalid called unorganized, or if it's just the idea of fighting that he didn't like. Baba's certainly not one for disagreements. One time, Khalto Samra, who likes to argue with just about everyone, started an argument with Baba about me not doing enough chores. Instead of telling her about all the work I do around the house, he nodded and said, "Meha, once a week, you come to Khalto Samra's house to work." I wish he would disagree with someone at least once. Baba says we need to be prepared in case we need to leave quickly. But where will we go? I asked Baba. I don't want to go anywhere else. I especially don't want to go to Khalto Samra's. She screams at me when I don't clean her floor the way she wants. She says, how is a girl going to get a decent husband if she can't even wash a floor? I tell her I don't want a husband, and she makes me wash her floor anyway, calling me lazy and ungrateful. I'm not sure yet where we would go. Just be ready, he says, still whispering, his dark eyes turned to the evening sky. February 1948. I end up being stuck at the shop watching Baba and his helpers tailor men's suits. I know I'm supposed to be doing my homework, but Yasin keeps flinging paper airplanes at me when Baba looks away. He makes me so mad I want to scream. At least if we were at home, I could make bigger planes to throw back or snatch his sack of marbles and run away with them. but here it is too tight of a space to run. The shape is a square room lined with sewing machines, clothing racks filled with customers' orders, and the cash machine counter along the back wall. The left side is the curtained off fitting area with a raised floor for measurement, and the right side is lined with work tables and a space to hand pin clothes. In the corner between the work tables and the clothing rack is a small table with a big wood framed radio that Baba treasures more than the whole shop, which leaves very little space for movement if I was to steal Yasin's marbles. The walls are decorated with old family photographs of grandparents wearing Ottoman fez hats and of Baba and his family's orange grove when he was a boy. My favorite photograph is the one of me standing in front of Grandma's lemon tree. I'm standing next to Yasin and we're holding out lemons for the camera. Baba said we're not allowed to be mean to each other here in what he considers to be his second home. What he's really saying is you better not run around and knock over my radio. He thinks it's easy to ignore Yasin. He doesn't see the paper planes he keeps hitting me with. I just can't wait till this talk of war stops and I get to take the long way home with my friends again. Then I can get Yasin back with all the planes I want. I'll show him. March 1948. Yasin won't stop crying even though I promised him my sesame cookie. He usually does anything I tell him for a single bite. It's his favorite, but today it just won't do the trick. We are crouched underneath one of Baba's work tables, knees to chest like they showed us at school. Baba and Abu Khalid are squished under a sewing machine along the back wall. From where we sit, we can't see their faces, only the backs of their hairy arms assures me of their presence. The last one they dropped was really loud, so it scared Yasin, and now he is whimpering, snot from his nose, all over his face. I keep telling him, shush, it'll be all right. It will stop and we can go home and eat Mama's mulkhiyah. She's frying pitas today and I can't wait to crunch on them. Sometimes when we come home from school, I find a plate of them on the table. I sneak some into my mouth before I even wash my hands, but I have to be quick because if she catches me, I'll get a slipper hurled at me for sure. I begin to remind Yasin that he should calm down and remember that there's going to be fried pitas at home. But then they drop another one, and this is louder than before. And now Yasin is really crying, hands tightly gripping my arm, which is wet with his mucus and tears. I'm not sure if it is because of the low-flying planes or the rumble of the explosions, but our framed black and white family photograph is beginning to shake off the wall. It pulls further and further away from its nestled spot above Baba's large wood-framed radio. It is usually at this time of day that Baba turns one of its round black knobs to tune into his favorite comedy show. That's when he hands us a bowl of pistachios and we know that our time dusting the shop is done. We all settle into a comfortable seat on the floor mats to listen to the silly man argue with his wife over bringing his pet goat into her kitchen. The show is funny enough, but I think the funniest parts are watching Baba and Abu Khalid's bellies wiggle up and down when they giggle so hard they can barely speak. Today, instead of making us laugh, the radio is silent, save for the sound of shifting during each explosion. I watched the black and white photograph finally tear loose from the wall, revealing the long nail that once rooted it firmly into place. The stern faces of my grandparents soften as the nail loses more and more of its grip. I watch their faces turn dark in the shadows one moment and lit in the next as the frame swings from here to gone. Here, gone, here, gone. Bracing myself, I use my free hand to loosen Yasin's grip on my arm, which is getting wetter and wetter. When this stops, I need to grab the photographs and take them home, especially the one of us in the lemon tree. Just as Yasin yelps in protest, Baba runs over and scoops us both up and sits us between him and Abu Khalid under the sewing machine in the back of the shop. We are huddled further away from the front door now, all four of us squished into a nervous human sandwich. For a few moments, all we see and hear are bright flashes of lights and loud thundering crashes. I'm half leaning on the window table leg with my head resting somewhere between Baba's thigh and Abu Khalid's hairy arm. Abu Khalid lets out short wheezes for breath through a partly open mouth, releasing a faint odor of mint tea and cigarettes. I straighten out my back as to move away from his hot breath, but notice my new position forces Yasin's knobby knuckles to jab my lower back. I forget all about bad breath and knuckles when a nearly deafening boom violently shakes the ground. We all inadvertently jump up, Abu Khalid's head hitting the bottom of the table when the glass in the door breaks. A few long minutes of silence go by. till finally Baba says, this is lasting too long, but he needs to go see what is happening. He begins to leap up toward the door when Abu Khalid jumps up after him, tripping over the glass from the shop's door on the way. He grabs Baba's shoulder, tells him to wait. We can't be sure that it's over. Baba opens his mouth to speak when someone standing outside the shop shouts to look up. I look up toward the sky to see millions of pieces of paper floating down to the ground like snow, but it's too warm for that now. As the papers land, the people on the street start gathering around. Slowly, everyone begins coming out of the shops and houses they were hiding in. Baba says, stay with Abu Khalid, but I stand up anyway. I feel my legs starting to cramp up and look down and see Yasin has wrapped himself around it. I help him up, but he stays close to me and we both look out toward the street. What does it say? Abu Khalid asks. Baba steps on one of the papers to keep it from flying away. He picks it up and after slowly turning it over in his hand says, we have 2 weeks to leave, or what happened to Dar Yassin will be the same thing to happen to Yafa. What does that mean? I ask Baba, but he only closes his eyes and shakes his head. We make our way over the rubble, crunching splintered wood and shattered glass as we walk. Yasin walks alongside me, gripping my elbow. He's glued to me, so whenever he stumbles over a pile of debris, he ends up jerking my arm hard wherever he goes. I try to wiggle out of his grip, but get caught looking around. The square looks so different with broken glass and dust everywhere. We finally get home and find Mama sitting at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. She looks up when she hears us come in. Maha, yes, and she yelps out in a high-pitched tone while making her way over to us. Mishan, Allah, tell me you're not hurt, she says while bending down to hug us. She bumps me with her belly on her way down. I was so worried. Mama thinks she's having another boy. She says she had a dream about it the other night. I told her I'm tired of boys and want a little sister instead, but I don't think she's going to listen. They're fine, Labiba. Are you all right? Mama nodded slowly, grabbing Baba's face with both hands. She stared at him for what felt like a long time before burying her face in his chest. Mama met Baba in the Medina's outdoor market. As a merchant's oldest daughter, she grew up to love the feeling of soil in her fingers and knowing which hen would be the first to lay eggs. She mostly prided herself in her family's olive oil, taking the freshly bottled oil to the city to sell every week. Baba was at the market helping her father set up their vegetable stand. Mama told me she knew right away that Baba was drawn to her by the way he kept offering to help her pull her cart of bottles, asking to buy her oil. Mama, taking advantage of his affections, priced it double the normal price. Knowing it was impossible for anyone to be foolish enough to buy the oil at that price, she considered it a test of my father's intentions. As it turned out, Baba didn't only agree to the ridiculous price, but also offered to buy the entire cart. I was so worried about you. The radio said they bombed the Medina and you took so long to get home. I was afraid you were all... Mama's dark brown eyes silently filled with liquid that she fought back between her words. Shh, Baba interrupted, rubbing Mama's back. Everything is fine. No need to be upset. The stress is not good for you right now. Mama inhaled deeply as if soaking in his words and turned toward me. I was frozen in place in the doorway, surprised by Mama's panicked state. Mahan, go get cleaned up and help your brother. We'll have dinner as soon as you're all washed up. I hesitate. Remember, I was still standing in the open doorway. I close the door and take my shoes off before leading Yasin into the washroom. Hey, Maha, Yasin asks. I turn on the faucet. Do you think we'll have to eat dinner under the table in case the boom comes back? I don't know, Yasin. You sure ask a lot of questions for someone who needs help reaching the sink. April 1948. I'm relieved to see Abu Khalid, but he doesn't seem to be relieved to see us now that he realizes we are here in the middle of the dark square without our parents. I wonder if he knows where they are. There was so much commotion, people running in every direction after they dropped bombs. Abu Khalid takes my hand and I hold on to Yasin's. We take off running, careful not to trip over broken bricks and glass. I notice other people are running too, familiar faces that under normal circumstances I would greet. Yasin lets go of my hand and I stop running. Abu Khalid, still jogging, tugs at my hand, sending me stumbling forward before he realizes our human train has stopped. I want to stop to ask someone what happened. I wonder if any of them saw which way my parents went, but there's no time to speak, to think. I hear Yasin's feet scrape across the ground behind me, but then the noise stops. I run toward him and see he's a few paces behind me, frozen. I turn to meet his gaze. I see that he's staring at a pair of legs separated from their body. We need to keep moving. Abu Khalid's steady voice breaks the spell and brings us back to our mission, finding our parents. Yes, and blinks wildly and nods as he leaves the scene behind. I look back once more, not trusting this new reality. I wanted to stay and look more, to touch the spaces at the top of the separated tissue and imagine where they might fit back together again, but Abu Khalid grabs the top of my shoulder and pulls me away. He leads me to a dark alleyway where he calls for our parents. Finally, Mama appears, squatting in the corner with the bottom half of her skirt soaked through. She has one hand on the brick wall and the other holding her lower stomach. Do you need help? I ask, afraid for what the answer might be. No, Habibti, your father went to find a doctor. Are you hurt? No, but I think the baby is coming. Mama responded calmly as her body swayed right and left. The baby, isn't it still early? Yes, by a few weeks, but with all this running, he wants to come now. Mama's smile quickly turned to grimace as she held her body still and bent her knees in a deep squat. Abu Khalid's face turned a pasty white at the sound of now. He was like most men in Yafa who learned to leave women concerns for the women. What if Tariq doesn't return in time with help? He asked hesitantly. Then I will deliver this child the same way I delivered those two, one breath at a time. The pain passed and Mama returned to swaying. What do you need to do right now? Surely I can get you something. Mama and I exchanged a knowing glance. He needs to feel helpful. Water would be good. Just promise me you won't move from this spot. Oh, don't worry, we won't go anywhere. Mama looked up for the first time and smiled at Abu Khalid. He nodded and took off running. With her face in light, I could see sweat beads forming on her oval face, forming streams that ran down her cheekbones like rivers. It's over now, can't we just go home? Yasin asks in a whisper. We don't know that for sure. It's best to stay here for now. Does it hurt, Mama? Hurt? No, not right now. It wasn't long before I took the brick wall's place as the lean-to supporting Mama's weight in times of pain. In times of quiet, it was so still that the only sound was air funneling in and out of my chest. In all the stillness, I couldn't help but think about that pair of legs in the street. I kept imagining them getting up and running off on their own, looking for the rest of their body. There they go, tripping over other lost legs, getting tangled in toes. I tried to focus on the sound of my breathing instead, but my slow, deep breaths sound offbeat near Mama's wheezing. The silence made me remember different days in this plaza, a time that now felt like it was different life altogether. I think back to all the afternoons Mama made me walk the 5 blocks to the market to get flour or sugar. I would always complain about the long walk in the sun, but I really didn't mind it much. There was always something to see and people to talk to, women shopping with babies on their backs, men heaving crates of goods to and fro, businessmen reading the paper, old men playing cards, smoking water pipes, women selling spools of fabric and thread. I always stayed a bit longer near the fabric. I was drawn in by the vivid colors and I liked picturing what the cotton or silk would look like if I sewed it into my skirt or blouse. As usual, I greeted Muhammad and she greeted me back, handing me a sliver of red ribbon she says would look good tied to my braid. I say shukran and hand her some money to thank her, but she declines and says it's on the house for the time Baba helped her on her land. She says to make sure I say hi for her, and I promise I will. We wish each other salam, and I make my way over to my favorite part of my stroll, Abu Ali's seafood stand. The boy that helps Abu Ali sell fish always smiles at me, and I can't help but smile back at his dimpled cheeks. Hey, Sitna Nema, she calls me, or Our Lady of the Freckles. His voice is salty, like he spent too much of it shouting at customers. I say hi back and want to add Abu Samek, but I'm not sure if he would laugh at being dubbed father of the fish. He doesn't have much of a beard yet, so he can't be too much older than me, but his tired eyes make him look older. I like watching his hands move smoothly from fish to paper wrap to bag to hand and back again. The movement is so fluid, you'd think he was born selling fish. What you got there, a gift for my lovely hair, he asks, pointing to the red ribbon. Just then, a gust of wind blew the ribbon out of my hands before I could respond, taking it on a swirling journey up and over the chatter of the plaza and across the street toward a group of old men playing cards. I feel my cheeks burn as I attempt to snatch the ribbon out of the sky before I become swallowed up by the plaza's hungry eyes, almost falling over a sidewalk table in front of Ghalib's cafe. I finally managed to grab the runaway ribbon, but not before sending a tray of coffee headlong into the air, landing in a pool of black liquid at the feet of an old woman. Sea breezes are deceptive, pleasant and soft one moment, harsh and unforgiving the next. I find myself suddenly pulled up to standing by a bouquet of arms attached to blurry faces and a hum of voices. One voice instantly sounds clearer than the rest. I didn't know Sitman Nemesh can fly, the boy chuckled from across the plaza, sending a roar of laughter into the crowd. Tightly gripping the object of my betrayal, I stuffed the ribbon deep into my skirt pocket and quickly forced out a laugh to shrug the crowd away. Regaining my balance, I turn my attention toward the old woman with coffee-drenched shoes. I'm so sorry, I say, grabbing for a nearby cloth. It's only old shoes, my child. Please, please, come sit for a moment. I quickly obliged. Garçon, please bring this young woman a cup of coffee. Oh, no, thank you. I don't drink coffee, I responded, still waiting for the heat to retreat from my face. Oh, my dear, it's not just for drinking, it's for reading, she responded in a heavy country accent. She smiled to reveal several missing teeth. I only half noticed that the waiter already set the steaming cup of coffee in front of me. I still had one eye out to the crowd, trying to pick out the voices for the one I wanted to hear most. You're going to read the coffee? She reached across the table toward my hand. Gripping my fingers, she adjusted her faded blue headscarf with her free hand. Not the coffee, the cup. You have to drink it first. But I don't drink coffee. It tastes like mud. Another strong gust swept through the plaza, loosening a few strands of her gray hair out from the front of the scarf. Don't you want to know your future? Her voice was light like a child, contrasting with the deep lines on her face. How can you read the future out of a cup? After you drink the coffee, the leftover grind will leave a pattern in the cup unique only to you. I decipher the pattern it leaves behind, that is all. The rest is up to you. The rest? This woman must be a traveling circus performer, I think as I gulp the coffee. Ugh. I hold my tongue out in disgust. I watch as she carefully picks up the cup. Sure enough, the coffee grounds etched an intricate tree, complete with branches and roots of varying thicknesses sprawled in all directions. She turns the cup over in her wide hands, carefully studying each limb of the tree, humming occasionally. Very interesting. I see that your hands will carry both a beginning and an end. Your life's path will emerge from this moment. That is, if you allow it to. If I allow it to. Your path is your choice. A beginning and an end. I needed to head home before the rain. I took a moment to check my pocket for the ribbon before excusing myself from the table, nodding politely before running off. Just as I got to the door, it began to rain. London, May 1978. I knew a lot about newborns before I became a midwife. Although nearly blind, they have a strong sense of smell. If left to themselves, they can find their mother's nipple, their life source, purely by smell. They also develop the ability to hear while still in the womb, which allows them to become familiar with voices and the world around them much sooner than one might expect. I'll never forget the night my mother gave birth to a lifeless baby boy. It is the same night bombs forced us to flee Jaffa and leave our ancestral home behind. I remember his face, peaceful and confident, as though completely sure of his decision to leave this place before he got here. It was at that moment that I knew what my life's work had to be. I went to Jaffa for the first time years after the Nekbe as a nurse midwife with the United Nations. The street names were different, but many of the stone homes still stood tall. It was easy finding our house since not much was changed, although many of the orchards were either destroyed by fire or neglect. Teta's birthing tree still stood at the far end of her land, branches heavy with lemons, each as large as hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Nada. That was incredibly vivid storytelling, and I love the way you captured the voice of the protagonist in such a real way. I felt like I was riding along behind their eyes throughout the entire thing. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you all for coming tonight. And thank you to our mentors who have been in the audience and who have continued to support Cambridge Common Writers in a really wonderful way. I encourage you to check out the work of all of our readers on their websites, and make sure you stop by cambridgecommonwriters.org on a regular basis. We are continually updating the site with new content. We're always adding folks. If you are in touch with Lesley grads who are not on the website, get them in touch with us, because we would love to be in contact with everyone. And again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for supporting Cambridge Common Writers. And we'll see you again soon at our next event.